workers across the United States. As a professor, as a researcher, as an author, and as an advocate, she has been a tireless champion for raising the minimum wage and addressing income inequality, particularly within the restaurant and hospitality industries. Our friend, our sister, Saru.
Hey.
Hello, good morning.
Good morning.
Thank you all. Thank you so much to Stuart for having me and for his solidarity over the many years. Thank you, Vice Chair, and of course, thank you to the great Secretary Redmond. Thank you for your leadership. Thank you all for listening to me for a few minutes. I think what I have to say is very important because last Saturday, the current president announced a policy called no tax on tips. And he has managed to secure the support and the great gratitude of millions of tipped workers across this country who frankly have been excluded from minimum wage increases for so long by Democrats who really should be standing with them. And so here's a big example of how we lose people. We lose people when a population of 14 million workers is not seen, is excluded over and over again, and then the fascist on the other side suddenly recognizes their needs and their interests. That's what happens. And so that's why I want to tell you a little bit about who these workers are and a plea to you to work together. We know we stand on the shoulders of incredible labor leaders in this room, of labor unions. We know we owe you a tremendous debt of gratitude, and I am here asking for partnership, both with the party and with labor. Thank you. So really quickly, just a little bit about me. I started this work after 9/11 together with workers from Windows on the World, which was the restaurant at the top of the World Trade Center, Tower 1. On that morning, 73 workers died, 13,000 restaurant workers lost their jobs, and I was asked by, at that time, HERE, later Unite Here, to start a relief center for workers who lost their jobs and the families of the victims. And what started as a relief center grew into a national movement for restaurant workers. And everywhere we went, we would ask workers, what are your top needs and concerns? And they would say, it's my wages, it's my wages, it's my wages. And when we looked at the data, we understood why. The restaurant industry is 14 million workers. 1 in 2 Americans has worked in the industry at some point in their lifetime. How many people here worked in the restaurant industry at some point in your life? Look around the room. 1 in 2 people has worked in this industry. 1 in 7 American working people works in the restaurant industry. It's the largest employer of women, immigrants, people of color, formerly incarcerated individuals, and youth in the United States. 14 million people, and yet it is the absolute lowest paying employer across the country because of a horrible history. 150 years ago, before emancipation, waiters in the U.S. were white men. They got actual wages, no tips. Tipping was reviled. Americans did not like tipping. They saw it as a vestige of European feudalism. When it came to the States, at first it was rejected, and waiters went on strike in 1853 for higher wages. And the restaurant industry started looking for cheaper labor. After emancipation, 2 industries sought to hire newly freed black people coming up from the South and not pay them and force them to live entirely on tips. One was the Pullman cars. They were hiring black men and telling them you live only on the tips of people whose baggage you carry. They organized, they formed the first black union in the United States, and they won the right to one fair wage, a full minimum wage with tips on top in 1937. In response to their organizing that the National Restaurant Association, which we call the other NRA, which doesn't just fight us, they fight the PRO Act, they fight every labor bill. The other NRA was formed in 1919 in response to the Pullman car porters organizing to ensure that the black women in the restaurant industry never got what the men in the Pullman trains got. And in 1938, tipped workers were successfully excluded from the Fair Labor Standards Act. When everybody else got a minimum wage, these workers were told, you get 0, you live on tips. And we went from 0 in 1938 to $2.13 an hour, the current federal minimum wage for tipped workers, not for a tiny marginalized population, but for the largest employer of women, immigrants, people of color, and youth in the United States of America. And I'm sorry to say, it's $2 because of Democrats. It's $2 because Democrats have led minimum wage increases for the last 100 years, and in 43 states have consistently left out these workers over and over and over again. Today they are overwhelmingly women of color, highest rates of single moms, highest rates of sexual harassment in the industry, working as waitresses in IHOP and Denny's, and they largely don't vote, but they could. We know that they will, because we have proof. We have been at this for over a decade, and in 2018 in Michigan, we collected enough signatures to put an initiative on the ballot in Michigan that would raise the minimum wage for all workers and end that sub-minimum wage for tipped workers. It was overwhelmingly popular, and the Republicans who controlled the legislature at the time knew that it would drive, in their words, the wrong people out to vote. So they adopted our measure and made it the law. Republicans raised the wage from 3 to 12 in 2018, saying to the press, we're doing this only to ensure it doesn't drive the wrong people to vote. We promised to gut it after the election. That election, we organized 100,000 low-wage workers, restaurant workers, to turn out to vote on this issue with the peer-to-peer voter program. We saw a 300% increase in restaurant workers turning out to vote. From 12%, these folks typically don't vote, to 40%. That year, Gretchen Whitmer ran, and Brandon Dillon, who was the head of the Michigan Democratic Party, said to her and to us, it was restaurant workers who helped get Gretchen into office. The Republicans did, in fact, overturn our wage back down to 3, but last year, we finally, with the support of the UAW and SEIU and the Michigan AFL, we won one fair wage, making Michigan the first state east of the Mississippi to end the sub-minimum wage for tip workers. But that year, that example gave us a clear, I think, an epitome of what's happening with the working class broadly outside of unions, non-union working people. Think of a waitress in Michigan who earns $3, a little over $3 in Michigan. She works 3 jobs. She's a single mom. We're telling her, you really should go vote. You should vote. What's wrong with you? What's wrong with you? Why don't you go vote? She has not seen Democrats raise her wage in 30 years. Why would she go vote? She sees no impact on her life and her ability to feed her children. Why would she take time from the ability to feed her children with tips to go vote? It has been a struggle to get workers to see Democrats as standing for them when they haven't stood with them. And so we know that when Democrats, like Whitmer or others, run on the issue of not just raising wages, but ensuring all workers get a raise, including workers who've been excluded for too long, that we win, that we can win. In fact, we are winning. We won here in Washington, D.C. We won a raise from $5 to $16.50 for tipped workers. We won in Chicago with the support of the Chicago Teachers Union and with SEIU. We won in Michigan thanks to UAW and AFL and SEIU. We are about to win in Illinois. Thank you so much to the partnership of John Costa and the Amalgamated Transit Union and Deborah Lane from the Amalgamated Transit Union. We are about to win in the state of Illinois. We already have a lot of support and a lot of momentum. We are running this in about a dozen other states. And we are going through an incredible moment of worker power, as sad as it is to see what Trump is doing, and as hard as the election was for us. You must know, at least in the restaurant industry, we are in a moment of power. Post-pandemic, millions of workers are refusing to work for $2 and $3 an hour. Restaurants are being forced to raise wages, which is why we are winning at the local and state level. And if we actually build on that power of workers standing up for themselves in the workplace, we can also build on that power to have them stand up for us at the ballot box. And so we have come together beyond restaurant workers with NEA and National Employment Law Project and SEIU and AFL and a bunch of other partners, People's Action, Center for Popular Democracy, to put together a proactive, much bigger vision for a living wage for all. And we are moving bills and ballot measures in over a dozen states with organizing committees, and we are working with many of the unions in this room on these policies. I just want to name in particular the partners. We are working with OEA in Ohio, AFSCME, is Larry still here? Thank you so much for AFSCME support in Arizona, working with the UAW in both, thank you so much. And thanks both to Larry and the great leadership of Paul Booth as well. SEIU in Illinois and Maryland, Unite here in DC and Maryland. And by the way, right after this, in 15 minutes, a group of DC and Maryland restaurant workers are going to join us for a press event with Stuart and several others to talk directly to the DNC. There's been so much punditry. You really should listen to the working class. You really should address the working class. Come hear from workers, especially non-union workers, in Magnolia 1 on the second floor. In 10 minutes, we're going to be there with workers. Look, I'm going to shut up and say that no tax on tips is demonstrating the peril of making compromises that leave large swaths of American workers out of wage gains, out of benefits. Because if they see Democrats over and over again leaving them out, and at the same time see Republicans actually delivering something as stupid and bad as it is, 2/3 of tipped workers don't even earn enough to pay federal income tax. It's not a real solution, but it is visibilizing this population that has felt so invisible by everybody for so long, and they're not tiny. It's 14 million workers. And so we are asking you to work with us. I know you saw all of this. Youth, this is the top issue. People of color, this is the top issue. Work with us on a Living Wage for All campaign in multiple states. Partner with us, Democrats and labor unions, for a living wage that is closer to the cost of living, closer to $20, which is what we're moving in multiple states. And ending all subminimum wages, tipped workers, workers with disabilities, youth incarcerated workers. In California, we're working with the UAW to organize incarcerated workers to get a minimum wage. They are 1/3 of our firefighters fighting those LA fires, paid 8 cents an hour. Nobody should get less than minimum wage. What is the point of a word minimum if so many people can earn legally less than it? 20 million people in America. We as a labor movement, as a Democratic Party, we have to be the home for all working people, not just union members. We have to be the place that is seen as standing up for all workers together. And I promise you, I know 14 million workers would be so excited to work on the PRO Act if they saw us here in this room fighting for them and their wage increases, which is their top priority right now. So I hope you will join us together in fighting for all workers to get a livable wage, a living wage for all. Thank you so much.